There's the big boy, and this is the recent picture. I just got it off the internet. Somebody wrote big boy on it, and that's what the guys at the factory did. They were trying to figure out what they should call this thing, the 484, because the 4664 was a Challenger, but so some machinist wrote big boy on it, and the name stuck. So at American Locomotives. So anyway, I recently read a book. Good.
Well, that author really missed it, didn't he?
It's several books, but this was Lucius Beebe, who was quite a famous author. I think he worked for the New York Tribune, and he owned a railroad car, and with his partner Charles Clegg, and very good photographer, a great writer, fun to read his prose. But that was the era. He was talking about diesels, and you see there's the Zephyr 900 horsepower and an articulated lightweight train, and there's the UP 10,000, M10,000. These were small, lightweight, fast, but very lightweight trains. And so, the railroads are a very capital intensive, slow industry. And I worked for, as an engineer for the utility, and the utility is also very slow, capital intensive industry that doesn't change very fast. So, but he said, yeah, there'll probably be just some diesels by the year 2000, but steam is still going to be the main type of locomotive. Well, that was in the mid 30s. And so my question that popped into my mind is, why did steam locomotives disappear so quickly in the 1950s? I mean, they were just there and then they were gone. So, so to do this, I thought, well, we'll break it down into pieces. First, we'll look at how steam works and why did steam disappear so quickly. And then we'll look at the periods of development of steam and how it changed during its 100 and some years. And then we'll also talk about classifications, the Pacific, the Northern, all those type of, and so we'll kind of go through this. Well, first we'll look at how a steam locomotive works. Okay, over on the right-hand side is the cab, and there's an engineer and a fireman. And you can see there's the engineer on the right, and the fireman's throwing coal into the firebox. Now, if you notice above the fireman's head, up here, there's two sight gauges. The fireman really has three different jobs. The first one, most important, more than anything else, is to keep water in these sight glasses, because if you do not, the engine will explode. And actually, they did a pretty good job, considering there's some 50,000 steam locomotives running around North America. They had a few blow up, but not that many. They did have a couple of safety features, which we'll talk about, but they were pretty good. I mean, it's obviously it's your livelihood too, being alive, but you can see the other thing he's got to do, obviously, is put fuel in. And you can see this is the grate where the coal sits, and he throws coal over here, he throws coal over there, he throws in the middle, he throws in the corners, trying to get a nice even bed of coal so it burns. And so he has these valves here. The fireman has to operate to keep the water in the sight glass. And then the other thing he has to do is when they get out on the road and he's not firing, he has to watch outside of the cab for the engineer. So the fireman is throwing coal into this locomotive, and the coal burns at about 2,000, 2,500 degrees. And it's sitting on this grate. Now the unburned coal, the ash and stuff like that, falls down into this ash pan, which is down here. But the fire is sucked out because the air comes in like this under the bed, and then it's sucked down. These pink things are flues, because it's flue gas that's going down the tubes. It's sucked down the flue gas, and this is the boiler. It's full of water. And it has to stay full of water, because if it doesn't, the thing will blow up. And then the steam is heated up, the water's heated up, and then it bubbles up here into the steam dome, and then the steam wants to escape. So here's the connection to the throttle. The engineer has a lever that opens this throttle, and then the steam goes down this pipe and goes down into the valves, and then it pushes the steam, the valve back, and it moves the wheel a quarter of a turn, and then it pushes steam in here, and it pulls the rod back, and it moves the steam the wheel another quarter of a turn. Then the cylinders on the other side are 180-degree opposite, so they pull it this way and this way. So that's how the train is able to keep going.
Are they 180-degree opposite or 90-degree opposite?
90-degree opposite.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, because it has to make a complete cycle. You're absolutely right. Sorry about that. Yep. Very good comment. And so then the steam exhausts into this nozzle, and then the nozzle blows up, and then it sucks air and flue gas and carbon dioxide and water vapor and everything through the flues out the chimney. So that's how the boiler gets draft.
So it's a fire tube boiler.
It's a fire tube boiler, yes. And they did try water tube boilers at the end, but they're great for utilities and hospitals and stuff like that, but they're not made to move. They do not work well if you're on a moving vehicle. That's what they learned.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's another reason why the Navy always used fire tube boilers on their ships, and that was because they started up a whole lot faster.
sure, yes, absolutely. They don't have so much metal.
You have steam quicker.
Yes,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
that's a good point. And so
Ross,
this-
where
Yeah, go
does
ahead.
where does the condensate go after the steam has been used up in the pistons, in the piston chamber?
It goes right out the chimney. That's the big problem with this, as I discovered. When they first start the engine, there's condensate in the pistons, and that's why you'll see them start and they're blowing steam out the side of the pistons down here, because they don't want it. They don't want water in there, because water's incompressible. It will break the rod.
You'll lock the,
Yeah. But the problem, Ron, is it goes right on out. It really does. They don't get much condensation because the gases here are probably, 700-800 degrees, 1,000 degrees. And so you're not getting much condensation. And so it blows out with the stack, with the smoke.
So you're saying then that the water vapor in the steam goes out the stack along with the flue gases?
Yes, and that's why you see big white in the wintertime. You see these big white plumes. That's where most of the energy from the coal is going.
so your exhaust, Ron, your exhaust from the cylinder, say it moves one direction, you're pushing the other exhaust out, and that's the condensate and the gas that is going up the chimney. And then your valve shifts and you put gas in this side, and that whole thing shifts over, and that blows out the chimney.
Well,
Now that's ideal world.
if it combines with the flue gases,
Mhm.
then what comes out of the stack must be fairly acidic.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
It is, and if you've ever ridden behind a steam engine where the fireman isn't doing the best job or whatever, or the coal's wet, it'll be raining a mild acid, mild sulfuric acid. So
Wow.
very mild.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so that's kind of the inside of it. Now this is a superheated steam locomotive. We'll talk more about that, but here's the cutaway of the boiler. It's actually been cut away, I think at a museum. And so the yellow area is where the flue gas goes, and this is all water. And then up here would be steam. And these big tubes there are tubes inside these big tubes, and that's to superheat the steam. And we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, the heat is just rerouted.
That's right. And so this is from the smoke box looking back. So here are all the flues for regular flue gas. Here are the big flues that are for that hold steam superheater tubes. And then here are the big pipes that are coming from the throttle to this one goes to this steam chest and valve and this piston. This one goes down to this side. And then there's the chimney. Oops. This is a little different diagram. This is the superheated steam locomotive. Again, blue is water, And you want to make sure that you keep this now, they early on they developed a soft plug that they put right up here, and it's right on the top of the crown sheet, and that has saved a lot of lives. If the firemen ever let the water get a little bit low, this is it's a metal that would melt much lower than the mild steel. Mild steel is like 700, gets soft at about 700 degrees, something like that. This thing would melt at about 500. So it would if there isn't enough water here and that little plug melts, then it douses the fire with water before the thing blows up. So they did have some safety mechanisms in addition to the safety valve right here for overpressure. But again, here's the grate, and then the fire would come up here, the gases go down here, and then they get blown out the chimney. Now here's the throttle valve. You can see the linkage to the throttle valve. And so the engineer pulls back on the throttle and it allows steam into this chest up here. Then it goes through these little tubes and it's saturated steam here. Say this locomotive's at 175 pounds. You know, what Ron, what's the, do you guys have a steam or hot water system at Judson?
We used to have steam, but not anymore.
But it was
And the
probably
steam
what,
we
20 pounds, something like that?
No, it was low pressure. It was only 4 pounds.
Oh, 4 pounds, really low. Okay.
Yeah.
So these are about
Way low
170 pounds. Now at 170 pounds, the steam temperature is like 335 degrees. Because if you think about it, at sea level, you boil water, it's at 212. You go to Denver, it boils at about what, 180, something like that. But if you increase it to 175 or 200 pounds, you're talking 300 and some degrees. So the steam up here is at 175 psi, 300 degrees. You bring it in here. Now you run it in these tubes, and you can get it up to 500 degrees. So you're adding additional heat to that steam, and it really doesn't cost you anything. So that's how they improved efficiency. Then the superheated steam, which is red here, that goes to the valve now. Now there's one more piece that we need to talk about, and that's this thing that's hooked up to the Johnson bar, the big Johnson bar. That is called the cutoff, and that changes the linkage here, so that as you get going, you want to shorten the amount of time that you're putting steam into the pistons, and so that changes the linkage around so that you're not using so much steam, because you need a lot of steam when you get started, but once you get going, you don't need that much steam, and that's why the engines have this choppy thing once they really get rolling. So, okay, here's a different. Here's the water tank in the tender, and then there's an injector or just a plain old piston pump, a feed water pump, to pump water in the boiler, because you have to pump it in at 175 pounds, and the injector will do that. And here's the firebox. Here's what they call the arch. That kind of keeps the fire down here above the grate. And there's a little auxiliary steam dome on this one. Here's the throttle. Here's the sand dome that dumps sand, as they still do when they need traction or if the rail's wet. And then the steam comes down here. We saw the branch pipes in the smoke box.